Yo, what's going on, guys? And Doug Christie has been announced as the interim coach for the Sacramento Kings. I'm just kind of rehashing the video we uploaded just recently about the Sacramento Kings, and just mainly because I talked about all the coaching candidates that they had, from Ricardo to Jim Moore and Doug Christie and Jay Triano. But we expected Doug Christie and his defensive identity and his defensive mentality to be the type of coach. He's a guy who went from playing to broadcasting to coaching. He's a guy who has high basketball IQ. So it only makes sense that they would want someone like him. And he's a former player, so he's going to resonate with the players hopefully a bit better than previously. Because let's be honest, part of the issue, it seems like, is, we talked about this in the video about talking about Mike Brown's firing, is that it seemed to be the biggest thing was saving the relationship with De'Aaron Fox. And De'Aaron Fox is clearly the guy that they want to keep around long term. And we've also talked about how this roster is flawed, and we'll get into that. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section. What do you guys think of this and why? Let's get to it. So the Sacramento Kings have turned to a familiar face, naming Doug Christie as their interim head coach after parting ways with Mike Brown. Brown, who obviously had signed that 3-year extension, was the 13-8 start to the 24-25 season. They're currently 12th in the Western Conference. They're in a 5-game losing streak, and they're seeking to salvage a season that began with playoff aspirations. Now, they're 7th in the NBA in scoring as a team, 114.7 points, but they have defensive issues. Their late game execution have plagued this team, and they lead the league in clutch time losses with 13. Their inability to close out games effectively is bad. This team can get to the free throw line. They're 4th in free throw percentage. They're 8th in field goal percentage with 47%. You got Sabonis out there averaging 21 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, 26 points per game, 6 assists. And the thing is the Sacramento ranks, 3rd worst in opponent 3-point percentage, and they struggle to contain opponents in the clutch. And the thing is they're actually middle of the pack in that rating, 1.2. So what does Doug Christie do? Obviously, Doug Christie, Kings legend, longtime assistant coach, now steps into a somewhat familiar role that is going to be huge for this Kings franchise. They need this guy to come out here and go swinging. They need him to be there for them. It'd be kind of the guy that they can lean on and trust to pull them through this. As I think when you look at this situation, it's not entirely the Kings' fault that they're or Mr. Mike Brown. I think the roster, anybody who knows basketball would say this roster was somewhat flawed and needed to be adjusted. And by having a guy like Doug Christie, who's a former player with deep ties to the franchise, he's going to bring a wealth of basketball knowledge and an intimate understanding of the team's culture. He's been with the coaching staff since 2021, so it's going to be a seamless transition there. But the fact that he's got the passion for the game, has the connection with the fan base, known for his defensive intensity and identity as a player, he's going to emphasize toughness, communication, and effort and hustle on both ends of the floor, but specifically on the defensive end. His familiarity with the roster will also help address the team's rotation and laps and late game execution, while also fostering, I think, a stronger defensive identity. Now, I think Doug Christie already has a rapport with key players like Fox and Sabonis, which is huge. By leveraging that strength and demanding accountability and aiming to create a cohesive unit that's capable of competing and tightly contesting, he's going to help this team climb up the Western Conference standings. And I think he's a guy who can actually turn this appointment as an intern head coach and move this as a pivotal moment. While this team is underperforming, it has talent. DeMar DeRozan, Keon Ellis, De'Aaron Fox. There's still Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles on this team. Keegan Murray and Domantas Sabonis. Like, this team has talent. Devin Carter's still, he's going to come back hopefully. And this is going to be a team that's able to make more of an impact and be a team that can turn it around because they have all the tools there. Yes, there are defensive lapses and that they need to trade Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles hopefully for offensive players. I mean, not offensive players, but defensive players, are two-way players. Like Dorian Finney-Smith would be fantastic. If this team can go out and at this point try to get themselves a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith and a Cam Thomas, that would help them out a lot. Not solve everything. And I don't know. At this point, I think when you look at this team, they want to salvage what they have with De'Aaron Fox. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. The rest of the video, we'll be talking about why they fired Mike Brown. Bye. Wow, this was not what I thought I was going to make. Mike Brown's been fired. The report right here, if we want to read it, first reported by ESPN's Sean Sharania. In the midst of a 5-game losing streak, 12, 11, 17, they are in 12th place. They're actually only 2 games away from the 8th seed and 4 games away from the 6th seed. So the team has not been lost. And Mike Brown had actually signed a 3-year extension with the team through 2027 with the Kings, and now he has been fired. The coach of the year from the 2022 to 23 season, the man who ended the Sacramento Kings, playoff drought, is now gone. I want to say something. I have been told by a media member that last week or the week before, Mike Brown made all media, I think he confiscated all media members' phones, and then he made all the media members watch him break down like everything that was wrong in the Sacramento Kings' game. And that's not really a great thing to do. And I have been hearing that trouble have been brewing in Sacramento. And I like Mike Brown as a coach and as a person. And I think the bigger problem was not Mike Brown. The bigger problem was the way this team was built. I don't know if, before we continue, Sacramento Kings fans, we're going to talk about your guys' interim head coach who's not been announced yet, but we're going to give you guys the guys who are the potential options, like Jim Morin and Richard Foyce and Jay Triano, as well as Doug Christie, are the 4 guys that people are talking about as the interim head coach. So we'll talk about that, but I do want to talk, look. I had Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, and DeMar DeRozan was never going to be a good defensive team. No offense to Keegan Murray, they don't have a true shooting guard or power forward that are like Keon Ellis is awesome, but he's not going to alleviate the defensive liabilities that are here constantly. So there were so many things that needed to be addressed that still happen. I just look at that, and I think the bigger thing that we need to realize. First off, they're trying to do everything to keep De'Aaron Fox. They need to keep De'Aaron Fox, and I wouldn't be surprised if this firing was at the request of Clutch Sports. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Let's get into the rest of this video talking about who could potentially replace Mr. Mike Brown this season and what could the future have in store. So let's get right into it. Hit that like and subscribe button for more content like this. And yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting one moving forward. So let's break it down. Why did they fire the man, Mike Brown? So the Sacramento Kings' decision to fire Mike Brown marks a stunning midseason shakeup for a franchise that has playoff aspirations. Brown, who signed a 3-year extension through the 27 season after that historic 22-23 campaign that ended the 17 playoff drought, found himself ousted following the 13-18 start. The team's struggle in clutch situations and a 5-game losing streak proved to be the tipping point for management. Brown's tenure began with promise, but faltered this season. The Kings ranked 12th in the Western Conference and 5th in the Pacific Division, and they just have had inconsistent performances, both offensively and defensively. While the team managed a respectable 114.7 points per game, which is 7th in the NBA, their defensive lapses have just allowed opponents to average 113.6 points per game, which is 17th in the league, and they just can't close out games. Offensively, the Kings were among one of the leaders in free throw percentages, 4th best, and field goal percentage with the 8th best, as well as Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox were, you had Sabonis averaging 21 points, 13 rebounds, and 6 assists, shooting 60% for the field, while Fox is having 26 points and 6 assists a night. And Sacramento, though, is the 3rd worst opponent 3-point percentage team. People are shooting 37.5%, and they've struggled to limit, turnovers and key moments. Like, they really just haven't been able to do anything about it, and they have recorded 13 clutch time losses, the most in the NBA. Their net rating is actually middle of the pack, plus 1.2, and they actually also rank bottom half in the league in rebounds, steals, and blocks. I think this just shows, even though the roster's flawed, the shortcomings reflect that the system in place went beyond player performance and just they needed some sort of tactical overall. So